Great. Dana, I think you have the microphone.
Thank you. Dana Marshall with Dewey & LaBeouf and retired Foreign Service. It's very nice to see colleagues of long-standing. We don't use old colleagues anymore. And I knew that there would be waves of nostalgia seeing you guys. I must say, Al, that you really brought me back talking about visas that I ground out when I was a kid in Guayaquil, Ecuador. That was a different life, but that's not the purpose of the question. Question is that 900-pound gorilla in the room on the government reorg side, and Chuck, you are exempted from answering this if you don't want to. I understand you're an active duty person. But I'd certainly, of course, doesn't mean you can't give your views, but I'd be especially interested in Al and Sean's views, not just on what you might suggest that Jeff Zients and his group propose. And it looks like this one has a bit of a head of steam, and the president, in 2 speeches that I'm aware of, has alluded to this. But also, more, in my mind, even more important than simply changing the boxes, as important as that is, what new statutory authorities should this new agency have that will bring it into the kind of position which I think all of us who devote our whole lives to this subject matter think it needs to have to become effective? So reorg and statutory authorities.
Oh, simple question, Dave.
Simple question.
Yeah.
Chuck, are you brave enough to? Well, I'll
Go.
take a.
Good.
Thoughts out, but
Please.
Yeah, well, you're
Please,
closer.
You go for it.
First of all, again, it's been, as I mentioned, extraordinarily exciting to come back in the middle of, I think, the evolving and what will become more exciting as we go into more of the macro pieces, the National Export Initiative, and it gets more, I think, grounding as we've gone through that year. And I think I relate to this now, the 12 agencies. I'd heard the fish joke before. I won't mention from whom, so I know where the joke that the President told the State of the Union about where the fish came from, where that came from. But I think what I sense is, and I won't get, this is evolving. I think the President last week signed a 90-day executive order saying, I want to see this in mid-June, which I think indicates the seriousness of the effort. I think you've got both lenses. I don't know how this will play out. The efficiency lens of how can we look at redundancies and across the spectrum and the effectiveness piece. And I think that's what I hope this kind of tradecraft discussion that we're just very beginning to nibble away at here could go on over this period of time, so that the effectiveness piece is as important as the efficiency piece. I would just lay that out as a thought. Otherwise, I think you could easily have a budget-cutting exercise moving forward. And I think we do need to appreciate how we effectively deliver it. And I do think, frankly, it's an exciting moment because the opportunities to look not at boxes. I think if that's where that starts, it's a difficult exercise. But if you want to start looking at the connectivity between strategy and policy and programs and execution and finance and compliance and enforcement, if you want to see how those connect as functions and then get to some answers, that could be a very exciting process. So basically, I'm not saying any more because most of us don't know a lot more at this stage, and look forward to talking to the groups as they come around and share from a tradecraft perspective, I think, where this goes. And then you're right, depending on how you come out, you may or may not look at statutory responsibilities. Again, Sean and Al, you might have a deeper perspective on it than I do.
Well, I think you made a very important point about the connectivity among all of these different features. I think that's really profoundly right, and that's probably the starting point. Second, I would not only agree with Dana, one of the points you made, but I would sort of underscore it 3 times, is I think this has nothing to do with changing the boxes. And if we get involved in one of those types of exercises, I'm going to throw up my hands in despair. Third, Sean said something that was simple, but I think profound. It starts with attitude. You have to think this is important. And I must say, I've run into circumstances, even in the last week or two, where I've been dismayed by the fact that people in agencies that we think of as sort of business promotion agencies, as well as people that we think of as having other other matters that are more their central priority, appear to be utterly uninterested in whether an international organization or foreign government is taking a step that hinders U.S. business. And then my last point, I guess, would be just to reiterate some of the general observations I made in response to Harry Kopp's comments, is that I think as we get serious about exports, and I think we must, we'll understand that it doesn't have much to do with organization charts, and it doesn't have to do only with traditional tradecraft, although getting that right would be terribly important. But it has to do with macroeconomic policy. It has to do with getting the budget in better balance. It has to do with rebalancing the incentives as between consumption, investment, and exports. And it has to do with a whole series of steps that will improve the functioning of the international marketplace on the anti-corruption side and on the the disciplines for those countries that may, just as we have the bias towards consumption and imports, they have the bias towards exports, and they have to learn that they can manage their economies and achieve economic growth without expecting to dump products in other countries, even as their own country has unmet needs.